Recover!
In the year 2000, I was over in Mount Vernon in Virginia, and as you walked up there, there was a big tree on the right, and there were bales of hay, and there was a fella that was impersonating George Washington. And I sat through one presentation. There was about 30 of us there, and he did such a marvelous job that I sat through a second presentation with another 30 people, and then a third presentation. I was mesmerized. I knew nothing about this, and so then I went and read a book by Thomas Fleener, and it was even greater, but then life crowded in, and I didn't do anything more. But then in 2011, an author came here to the George Washington Inn, and he gave a 4-hour presentation on his book, Sacred Fire. And I just sat there and just took it in. And then the following February, 2012, I came here for a series of teas. I dressed up, not in uniform, but in his inaugural brown suit that he wore, and I did George Washington. So it's just kind of gone on, and I love talking with people about George and sensing where they're at and their questions are. Then I can respond to that. So that's how I got into doing George Washington. I go anywhere, anytime, and the cost is free.
How old were you in the war here?
In the war,
yes,
I was 44.
44?
Yes.
That's the start or the end?
That was the start. I was 52. So was there more than one copy of the U.S. Constitution or Declaration of Independence? Did you sign 2 copies or 3? Well, of course, I wasn't there. I was in Boston with the troops, but that's still something I need to know. So I'm forced to research things so that the next time it's asked, I know. There are times that I've been sitting, preparing, and I've gotten the feeling, oh, I need to research, and I've ignored that. But of course, somebody asked the question. So, what's George's middle name? Didn't have a middle name. In a 4th and 5th grade class, you have to really know your subject, because they're going to ask anything and everything, and you better know some of the names of George Washington's dogs, because they will ask, Kisses and Snoopy and Snuggles. And there's one young fella that was somewhat shy, and one of the teachers indicated that he was a smart young fella, but he kind of felt a little bit of ostracized, but he really knew about George and the war. And so I made a choice of finding that young fella, and then I would ask the class, well, what about this? They wouldn't know the answer, and I'd turn and I'd invoke the young man's name. Well, you know, don't you? Yes. What's the answer? He'd answer it, and I say, see, class, he knows. And I did that 3 or 4 times, and each time he got taller. You know, I shared with you the fella from Turkey that wanted, I have no U.S. history, I have no questions. And I said, well, what are your life goals? And he said, well, I've just graduated and I'm going to study Near East languages. And I indicated, well, those are not life goals. That's a career goal. If your career is your life goals, that when your career is over, then your life goals are over. And he said, wow. And he said, well, I guess my life goals are serving others. And I just beamed. I said, well, that is a goal that's truly worthy of your life, sir. And it happens to be my goal, too, not only as George, but as an individual. You know, King George III said, well, if Washington would step down from being general, he would be the greatest man in history. Napoleon Bonaparte indicated that Washington did what few other men could do. Shows a real humility, shows a perspective. He and the other founding fathers knew that they were setting up a new form of government, never tried. It was an experience, and what they set up was to last, not for their generation, but all the generations that followed. We have inherited that. How are we doing? Is the Constitution doing what George and the others had envisioned? The question is, are we involved? Is the common everyday citizen involved, or are we allowing other people to make our decisions for us? you study a historical figure like this and you think you know about him, but when you read more, he comes more and more alive, and then you get a sense of what his character is like. And you can't help but be changed. I'm doing things now that I did not do before I began doing George.
Like what?
Serving. I have gone to Clallam County, and my profession was a real estate appraiser, and I volunteered to serve on the Board of Equalization. They don't have an opening right now, but I'm thinking, gosh, this is what George asked us to do. We have a form of government that's a republic. Washington and Franklin was there in the Constitutional Convention. When Franklin left after we had a constitution, he was stopped in the streets of Philadelphia, and a woman said, "Mr. Franklin, what have you done to us?" And he said, "Madame, we have given you a republic if you can keep it." Now, at that time, there was only 1.5 million of us. There are 330 million plus, so we do the best we can with what we're given. And I think that's what George would say. Whatever you have, do the best you can. Do not serve yourself, but serve the nation, because the nation is a greater calling than any individual calling that you have. So give yourself. Love generously. It's what we did to give you a constitution.